What up, party people? I open up and ask me anything on my Instagram. Do it every week now. CJ's idea, not mine. And invite you to ask whatever feels most relevant to your life right now. And then I answer it in a long form setting with CJ here pitching me the question. So welcome, CJ. Hello.
Thank you.
You see her in the
What's
videos and on social media. So this is CJ. Give a brief, we didn't say we're going to do this, but give a brief, who are you? Because everyone is always asking, who is this person in your videos, Cody?
I am Cody's brand director. So we have been doing social media content together for a couple of years now. So most of the time,
half a decade.
I was like running most of the behind the scenes stuff for a while there. And then whenever we needed people popping out in the videos. And recently that's become a lot more of a thing because they seem to do pretty well. So
yeah, they definitely do. I love having you in there. You guys know me. I'm Cody. My background is cognitive behavioral neuroscience. I've got training in internal family systems, psychotherapy, and I work really, really well with women, really anybody, but women pretty specifically right now after heartbreak, and helping them in that weird space between a breakup, a divorce, a blindsiding breakup, a discard, and getting back into dating again by doing the inner work using neuroscience and internal family systems. Got a program called Becoming Her. And as you know, we create tons of content around these types of topics. So what surprised me the most based on that about the questions that we got is how much overlap there was underneath a lot of the questions that we got, which we'll kind of hit on, which I see from my background and what I study and stuff. So it makes sense. But a lot of what you guys asked pointed back to attachment, how we relate, how we react, and why certain dynamics keep kind of repeating. So today's Ask Me Anything kind of really focuses on, it looks like the questions that you put in here are almost all focused on attachment. So we're going to be answering your questions today and unpacking kind of what's going on underneath inside your mind, your brain, and your body. I'm excited. CJ, are you excited?
heck yeah, let's get into it. So the first question that was asked is going to end up being a little bit of a two-parter. The question was, can I get some more general information for the avoidant? And then with that, for people that don't know, can you kind of explain who the avoidant is?
Yeah, sure. So if you think of a secure person, closeness like helps regulate them. They can pendulate between being separate and being together, and they can regulate well. An anxious person, distance feels more like a threat. We'll talk about, I saw some of the other questions are about disorganized, so we'll go into that fourth style, which is not talked about often, but we'll go into that a little bit later. But the avoidant, closeness starts to overwhelm them generally. It's how they start to feel a little bit different. Inside the nervous system of someone who is more like avoidantly attached generally, avoidance is a deactivation strategy. And this is the part that for anxious people, anxiously attached humans, this will feel so weird. But the way that an anxious person feels when there's distance, how dysregulated they feel, the rumination, all of the activation in their nervous system that comes up when there's distance, that's how a avoidant person feels with closeness. So imagine how crappy you feel when that distance is created. That is how an avoidant is feeling when closeness becomes overwhelming. And so that avoidance and getting away from is a type of deactivation strategy, and it helps them turn down emotions. Emotions are not absent. It's just that their nervous system learned when they were younger that they can calm themselves better when they're alone. Okay. And so control to them is more important than vulnerability. There's a ton of other examples. I don't know if that gives you a big enough picture, but of kind of what you look like. Some of the biggest things that I see is like misconceptions. I just did a video on this, and avoidants get so much crap. Like they catch so much shade, and I feel bad because it can be painful, and more anxiously attached people or even more securely attached people are maybe more willing to share out loud what's going on and how they were affected in avoidance. So it just becomes this echo chamber of people shitting on avoidance, which sucks because they are people too. And I know they hurt you, and they've hurt people, and like I get the pain. However, I view them as little nervous systems, little parts. They're not cold. They're not narcissistic necessarily. They're not emotionally broken. They're not commitment phobic by default. Right? We can talk about what happens in childhood to get them there, but this is a learned nervous system strategy. Just the same way as you wanting, an anxious person wanting to attach, a secure person wanting to co-regulate, like it's just a different path of how they got there. And so I really hate when people pathologize avoidance because, again, they are little baby nervous systems as well. So does that give enough of a background or a big picture?
Yeah, I think that gives enough of a big picture. Can you maybe give us like what this looks like in a relationship? I know we cover this in short form a lot, but
in a relationship, the way that I like to think about anxious versus avoidant in relationships is by holding a fish. If anyone who's listening or is watching this has ever held a fish, right, you know that if fish are like slimy and slippery. And so if you don't hold on tight enough, right, the fish falls out of your hands. If you squeeze it too tight, it slips out of your hands, right? It's kind of like, or like a bar of soap even. And so you've got to have this just right amount that you're holding it. The just right is secure attachment. Squeezing it to death is anxious attachment, and not holding on tight enough is avoidant attachment, right? And so in relation to how it can show up in a relationship, relationship is when the biggest thing is shutdown, right? This is kind of a big indicator, especially in relation to when you're trying to do some type of repair, or you're mentioning something that hurt you or affected you or impacted you, and you're bringing that to more of an avoidant person. A really common pattern is kind of the shutdown. As someone who is like securely attached, but leaning under stress towards anxious, and I earned secure, meaning I was anxiously attached, but I have like become secure through therapy and coaching and practice and all the stuff that I preach. You get this sense for people. And one of the biggest things that you'll notice in an anxious attachment is this shutdown. You will feel as if they have just disappeared off of your radar. It's as if you just went blind and they're just no longer there. It's the craziest, wildest feeling. And that is one of the biggest like signs, or one of the biggest like behaviors that you'll notice inside of a relationship with avoidant is like under stress, or when criticized, or when bringing something up that maybe they didn't do right or correctly, or that just impacted you in a certain way, they just shut down. And it's like they're in this dark cloud in their head and you can't find them, right? Sometimes they can regulate, have learned to regulate and can come out of that cloud quicker. Other times they have no idea what's going on and they just remove themselves from the situation and they leave and run and things like that. But that is one of the bigger, like a really big sign that you'd be like, oh, okay, this is more of an anxious or avoidantly attached human, probably. That's one example.
So now moving on to what the actual question was. What is some more information for the avoidant? Maybe about themselves, about their nervous systems, how they should interact with other people?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing here is that understanding that what you're going through is a nervous system state, right? Or a dysregulation of your nervous system and a dysregulation of your attachment. And just like all of the advice and all of the tools that work for anxiously attached people, it's coming from a different angle, but bottom line, it is nervous system strategies and parts work, if you will. And so the first thing that I suggest for more avoidantly attached humans who are willing and able to, wanting to do some of this work, is start to think of this avoidance behavior as a part of them that feels avoidant. And so look at this as a part of you that is avoidant, as opposed to it being you. So that shifts it from you identifying as an avoidant to a part of you is avoidant or shows up as avoidant. That's really, really powerful because it shifts it out of your identity and makes it less pathological, meaning you're not taking it to heart as much, and it's not as much of a dig at your like literal identity and your fundamental worth, because it's not. It is just what happened in childhood to you, where your caregiver was not able to meet your needs emotionally in the way, so you had to take care of your own. Like, that sucks, right? And when you look at that with some empathy, you can start to understand how this part of you got created. And so realizing this is a part of you, not all of you, is a huge step. And then learning how to start to downshift your nervous system and really start to understand and create tools for yourself in those moments. Naming the part is a really great way. Name it to tame it. I say it all the time, but name this avoidant part and kind of what happens for you. In a past relationship, we had names for our more anxious parts, our avoidant parts, and that kind of stuff. And like my anxious part, or the like catastrophizing part, like under stress, we called my rogue part. And for her, it was called the black cloud, right? Because for her, she went up into this black cloud and that's kind of what it felt like. And so we had those names and it really, really helped. And so if you're more avoidant, naming it can be a super powerful way, that avoidance part that pops up. And then just starting to notice what happens for you. Is it like a black cloud? Do you shut down? What do you feel in your body? Do you feel really, really activated? Do you feel really, really like completely dissociated and like out of your body? What are you noticing in your body that's coming up when this part takes over and blends with you? And that awareness is the first step to being able to downshift your nervous system and regulate yourself. What helps you, right? Is it that you need 5 minutes? Is it that you need to take a walk? Like, what are those things so that you can start to get better at practicing and communicating what you need? And really the only way to do this is practice. I know it sucks, but when you're feeling that shutdown, really taking a second to, the work is inside the activation. When it feels like your nervous system is screaming, leave, 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 run, 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 the work is in that activation. Running away is just you repeating the pattern and reinforcing the pattern. And so little micro moments of you staying when you feel like you should run is, and it's so interesting because on the opposite side of this, these moments are intuition generally, of moments when maybe this isn't a healthy relationship. But for an avoidant, staying when they want to run is a really powerful way to start to get practice inside of that activation, even if it's just for a moment. Even literally, if you stay in the conversation for 10 seconds longer than you normally would, that's a start, and it breaks the pattern. So understand that this is not you. It is a part of you. So stop pathologizing it. Name that part of you, and then learn how to downshift your nervous system by becoming aware of what comes up for you in those moments, and then creating a micro moment where you stay in that activation for a little bit longer than you normally would, so that you can get used to what that feels like and break that pattern. Would be kind of the big 4 things. I've got multiple videos coming out that is more in depth on this stuff, because I have had a lot of people ask me, like, what can avoidance do? How can I heal? Which is beautiful. And I love that. And I want people to hear that avoidants are coming and asking, I don't want to do this anymore. Help me. So they're not these evil freaking people. And I know they hurt people sometimes. I get it, but they are people too. So
Right. And of course, if you want to see those videos, you can either subscribe here, of course, like and subscribe to this video, or follow us on the Mind Brain Body Lab Instagram, TikTok, etc.
What up? Interrupting our normal programming to announce Mind Brain Body Lab's first sponsor, Apollo Neuro. This tool I have been using for years, and I recommend it to all of my clients. Apollo is the only wearable that trains your nervous system to bounce back from stress naturally without pills. Okay, if you fall asleep fast but wake up at 2 a.m. with your mind racing, like I do sometimes, did last night even, or your wearable, like Whoop, Apple Watch, or whatever, is telling you that you're stressed without actually helping you, this is for you. Apollo doesn't just track your stress and sleep. It acts and is built on a decade of neuroscience research. It learns your stress patterns, calms your nervous system in real time, and helps you stay asleep using subtle vibrations. Users get up to 60 extra minutes of sleep a night, plus 40% less stress and 25% better focus. Apollo was just featured in Forbes for their vagus nerve science, and they just published a randomized pilot study suggesting it's the first wearable that helps prevent burnout. Mind Brain Body Lab subscribers get $99 off. Just hit the link in the description to grab yours. Let's dive back in.
On the other side of the avoidant conversation that seems to really be the hot topic was, how do I have the what are we conversation when getting into a relationship with an avoidant?
Love this question. I just did a video on this question, actually, like a short form video on this. The biggest thing here that I want people to understand, right? I can show you exactly how to do this. I'm trained in IFS. I know exactly how to do this. Before I do that though, okay, I just want you to just pause. Let's do some reflection. Okay. Is this a path you really want to go down? Let's reflect on that for just a second. Or is this the start of another loop? Like, is this another loop? The same one that you've gone in over and over and over again. Okay. Like, why did this question hook you? Why are you still watching this? Okay. Do you feel like you need an owner's manual just to ask for clarity? Are you rehearsing every single word so you don't scare them off? Okay. Do you believe these things will change because you have the conversation of what are we? Okay. Because they won't. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Okay. So I want people to reflect about that before we dive into this, because if you're trying to build a relationship, that's one thing. Okay. But if you're trying to manage someone else's nervous system so that you feel safe, that's completely different. One of those leads to partnership, okay? If you want to have this conversation to lead to partnership, great. The other one of those things leads you into my DMs feeling stuck, broken, and wondering how the fuck do I keep landing in the same relationship over and over and over again? I can't break the cycle. And no shade at those people. I love you, okay? This is one of those moments where you can break this pattern. So just ask yourself before you go into another rabbit hole, how do I have this conversation? How do I manipulate and manage this person's emotions? Maybe this could be the time where you don't go down this path and you pause this video and you realize, oh, this maybe isn't the right person for me. Just maybe. Okay. I just reflect on this. I'm not saying that to not have this conversation about what you are and what we're going to go over here in a second. I'm just asking, like, don't skip this reflection. Have this conversation. Okay. If clarity already feels this hard, it usually does not get easier later. Okay. Best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Just think about that. All right. So just had to give that disclaimer. If you want to talk to an avoidant about what we are, though, there are some things that we can do based on what we know about avoidance, okay? First and foremost, stop framing it as a question. That's the best thing that you could possibly do. What are we puts them into a corner, okay? So if you're triggering all of their favorite defense mechanisms, deflect, delay, disappear, all the Ds, right? They want to get away from this thing. So if you ask it as a question, you're putting them in a corner and there's pressure and you don't want to do that. What you want to do instead is make a statement, not a demand, okay? So instead, just lead with your direction. You create direction, like the direction, like I'm enjoying getting to know you and I'm moving towards being more intentional. There was no question there. You were stating your direction. And then what you want to be able to do, this is not pressure, this is just information for them. And then what you want to do is start to state your boundary without threatening them. So I just want to be honest where I am heading so I don't drift. Okay, you're making it about you, not about them. You're giving them information and then stating about what you're doing. You're not asking them to define anything. You're not asking for reassurance. You're not chasing clarity, right? You're just stating where you want to go. Okay, some things that could come up here. Okay, I'm already a step ahead of you guys. If they say, oh, I'm just going with the flow, what they're actually saying is, I don't want pressure. I just want access. To which you can reply, okay, that makes sense. I don't rush either. I just don't do undefined. Again, stating your boundaries, stating your direction, stating your standard, but not asking them questions, right? You're calm, you're grounded. That's it. If they say, well, I'm just not sure what I want right now, what they're actually saying is, Well, I do like you. I just don't want the responsibility of a relationship right now. To which you can reply, totally fair. I get that. I just want to check if our directions still overlap, and that will become abundantly clear to them and you in the next, we'll get here in a second, but this will become abundantly clear. Okay. So you're not arguing. You're not trying to convince them. Again, you're just collecting data. You're watching their behavior as you're stating these things, not asking questions. If they start to joke or they're deflecting or getting defensive, that is data as well, right? Like why do we need labels? Come on, man. We don't need labels, but we do need alignment. Okay. That is it. That's the line right there. And again, you're not asking them questions, right? You're not negotiating your needs in the same conversation that you're revealing them, right? You're stating your direction and then watching behavior over time. So you're taking away from, because someone, if you state your direction to a more secure person, they will probably say, oh yeah, I'm moving that direction as well. I love that. That's great. What does that look like for you? Here's what it looks like for me. And you're having a deeper conversation. If they're more of an avoidant person, again, some of the things that we just talked about might pop up. Deflect, they're joking, they're getting defensive, they're shutting down. Notice that. Watch that. Again, refer back to the start of this conversation. Is that a pattern and a cycle that you want to continue to go back down again and again and again? It's up to you. Okay. The thing that most people miss is they're asking this question and not then watching for behavior. Avoidants reveal their capacity through patterns, not the promises that they make, not the words that they say. When you ask them, what are we? You're putting them in the corner. They will say whatever will help their nervous system feel better, right? So you're getting false information and you're believing the delusion. What you should do is state your direction, watch behavior, because it is the patterns that will reveal what's going on in the avoidant and what they believe you are, not by you trying to force clarity, okay? If they pull away after this, you didn't ruin anything either. That's the other thing that people forget, right? You just learned something. Clarity does not scare the right person away. Surprise, surprise. It filters out the wrong ones, okay? And so that is not a loss. That's self-respect, and that's good, right? So that's what you want when you're working on, or when you're trying to have this conversation with an avoidant, like, what are we?
Yeah, I think my follow-up question on that would be, since we're talking about just, clarity and the right person here, who in your mind would be the right person to maybe approach this with an avoidant? Because if I'm either anxiously or securely attached, I can see how this would get frustrating very, very quickly if, I want to have a conversation. Like, at least if someone is anxiously attached, they will not leave, and you can kind of have that conversation and try to build a boundary because, everyone is working towards a common goal there. But with an avoidant, if they're just gone, what can you do? So who is the right person?
When you say who is the right person, what do you mean by that? The right person for what?
Like the right person to have this conversation with an avoidant.
Anyone is the right person to have this conversation. If they are not present for the conversation, can't be present for this conversation, won't listen to you, don't want to have this, they're the wrong person. Listen and watch the pattern, right? And that's their monkey, right? Everybody has a monkey on their back, and everyone has to handle their own monkey. Where we get into trouble is when we try to handle other people's monkeys, okay? That's their monkey. It has nothing to do with your worth, how good you are, how awesome of a partner you are, how lovable you are. None of that has anything to do with their capacity to have this conversation or not, right? You continuously choosing to put your hand on a hot stove by trying to catch them, that is your monkey. We should work on that.
I think the flip side that I would want to ask in that case then is, how do you have the what aren't we conversation with an avoidant?
That's interesting.
How are you supposed to kind of communicate that feeling so that way they understand like the attachment style difference?
I would suggest that again is not up to you. This is a trap that a lot of people get stuck in after a breakup, like a discard or something like this, is they want the other person to know you hurt me. Like, what you did to me was painful and is wrong, and you need to fix yourself so you don't do this to other people. And it's like getting bit by a snake, and instead of going and trying to find the antidote and going to the hospital, you start to chase down the snake, and you're like, dude, you bit me. What the heck? Why'd you bite me? Did you know that biting me is bad and you're going to kill me and your poison's now in me? Like, what the hell? Why'd you do this? And the snake's like, dude, this is my nature. Like, what the hell? And then you die because you didn't go get the antidote, right? So it's not your role necessarily from my perspective, which is seems kind of brutal, but it's just not your role. Like, if they get into relationships with multiple people and they can't find the love that they want consistently over time, hopefully they eventually will find their way to getting some help with that and breaking that pattern themselves. But it's not on you to break it. And it's not, again, about your worth that they are unwilling to look at that or unwilling to do that healing.
So someone who like really wants to be working towards a secure attachment would recognize these patterns in themselves. It doesn't require 100%. Intervention.
Like, if you're an avoidant, if I'm the avoidant, right? The intervention right, would be, why have my relationships for the last 8 relationships all ended in the same way? Something big and emotional happened in my external world or in my life, which shut me down, which then shut out my partner. We broke up, and I then felt relief for a little bit of time after the breakup because I was by myself and I was independent. But then all of a sudden I want connection again. So I stopped distracting myself for long enough to then go find another connection. And then the whole pattern happens again and again and again and again. And eventually either they will do that for the rest of their lives, happens, or they'll be like, I wonder, what's the common denominator here? Oh, that happens to be me. I wonder what I could do. And that turns into that self-reflection. Maybe, sometimes. But again, you can't control that. And that's their monkey. That's the hardest part to work on. Something that helped me a lot after my breakup with like avoidant leaning human was like what are they doing? Are they thinking about this? What's going on? And just saying, I don't know. And that's okay. I don't know. And that's okay. I say that so many times a day. It's not even funny because that you've just got to get to that place of acceptance that they may never change and that's not your problem and doesn't reflect poorly on you.
All right. I think that's good advice and like something that probably a lot of people need to hear just because, you want to help people along their journey.
The best way to help someone else is to help yourself, right? Like this goes back to I hear this all because the other question I get a lot is parents. I get parents asking me this question all the time. What can I do to make sure that my kids aren't messed up? And they want to do things to their kids as opposed to be the change, be the thing that they want to see. Like they want their kids to be disciplined and have healthy, consistent habits, patterns, routines, have a regulated nervous system and not be traumatized, but they're unwilling to regulate their own nervous system and work on their own baggage and shift their own patterns. The best thing that a parent could do for their child is to become what they are seeking, what they want, become regulated, become whole, be self-led. And because adults are just kids wearing costumes, for anyone else in your life who you want to see change, you being that change in the world is the best way to help them shift, change, and grow. Bottom line. So I just want to hammer on that before we moved on. So, because that's really close to my heart, is like when you start to let your own light shine, you just unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And as you start to liberate your own fears, your presence just starts to liberate others. And that is a really beautiful place to get. It's not easy, but I'm very passionate about that.
All right, now moving on to the next attachment style, we're talking about the rarer one. The question that was asked is, how do you heal a disorganized attachment style? And of course, walk us through a little bit what a disorganized attachment style is.
So we'll start with disorganized. This is no one talks about this. It's always anxious, avoidant, or secure. The disorganized attachment, sometimes called anxious avoidant, anxious-avoidant, because they get the best of both worlds. So a disorganized attachment is anxious and avoidant at the same time, which is the weirdest feeling ever. But they have intense longing for connection. But then panic, shut down, they get numb when closeness actually happens. Right? It's this push-pull. I hate you, don't leave me. I want you, I can't do this. And it often comes with some type of dissociation and then like emotional whiplash because they just beat the crap out of themselves for this dynamic that they cannot deal with. It wants closeness as badly as an anxious person and feels even more unsafe than an avoidant person when that safeness or when that closeness happens. It is the wildest thing you'll ever see in your entire life. Okay. Because what starts to happen or how this forms is wild. Okay. Because generally it means that a caregiver was very, very loving and then all of a sudden extraordinarily frightening. So the same person that can cause connection is also causing fear. Essentially what's happening is your nervous system is moving towards this person and feeling safe in your ventral vagal system and you have this safety cue that's coming through. And then in the next moment, all of a sudden there's a huge threat. And your threat system starts to come on at the same exact time. And so your connection system and your threat system neurologically are just like at war. And this is happening repeatedly over and over and over again when you are young. Well, it's not just when you're young. It's predominantly when you're young. But it's wild. And the core thing that kids learn, young ones learn here is that I need you to survive, but you're not safe. And it's tough. Like it sucks. Like I feel so bad. And these can be, again, another group that gets pathologized and like just beat the crap out of these like explosive personalities. And it's tough. It's a hard place to be because they have the plight of an anxious and an avoidant to work through. And generally their nervous system is more stressed because generally this stuff is happening in more of an abusive situation. Neglect, overt, emotional, mental, or physical abuse. It's not generally pretty. Just going to be honest with you. And that sucks. And that's where complex trauma, complex PTSD, complex trauma is the origin story for a lot of disorganized attached human beings. Some of them would say like BPD, borderline personality disorder, like things like that. Like they get lumped in that group. Maybe, don't know, but it can kind of feel like that sometimes. That's like a clinical diagnosis, which is different necessarily than just a disorganized attachment.
Right.
But a lot of the times the behavior gets confused between the two. So just something to note. You can't acquire it when you're an adult, and again, this is generally in like overtly abusive situations, domestic violence, things like that, where safe attachment becomes threatening and you have no escape. So again, abusive relationships, sometimes betrayal trauma can lead to this. You really, really want closeness, but then the last time you got really close to someone, they dropped you off the face of the earth and discarded you, they betrayed you, they cheated on you, like things like that can start to a disorganized pattern or feeling. Usually hardcore disorganized attachment is going to start in childhood, but you can pick up some of these patterns in adulthood as well. So the other interesting one as an adult is actually with therapists, coaches, authority figures, that like there was a huge, I forgot who it was. The Catholic Church has been a huge thing in the Catholic Church. There have been some priests that have been not just accused, have been found guilty of sexual abuse and all sorts of misconduct. That does not represent every priest. I 100% get that. For the people that happened to, though, those things happen to, though, the intense, and in a religious context, it's even more intense because they're enlightened by God, right? They're supposed to be like the arbiter between the two, between God and you. And so it's an intense authority figure that is supposed to make you feel safe, supposed to make you feel connected, and all of a sudden is a huge threat to you. That again can lead to this disorganized pattern. Even just hearing about it can lead to this disorganized pattern. So in relation to healing this, the first thing you got to really start to do is, again, it's very similar to avoidant attachment and anxious attachment. It's really similar. Like the process is very similar, but you got to stop pathologizing your attachment. You've got to build internal safety first. And this is even more important for a disorganized attached person because they just don't feel safe in any way, shape, or form and haven't. And so they've got to learn how to build that internal safety and regulate themselves so that they don't need something outside of themselves to regulate them, right? First and foremost, that gives them more personal power, more agency, and then allows them to build that co-regulation bridge over time. And this decouples fear from closeness, like the other shoe's about to drop type feeling, and creates a more stable attachment figure, which is why internal family systems are powerful because their self becomes their attachment figure. They become their own parent inside of themselves. And so it's really, really powerful. And so when you're looking at IFS, a disorganized attachment is actually a really interesting facet. We're going to get into some 300 level IFS stuff here, but we call it a polarization. And so what's happening essentially is there are polarized parts in this person's system. If you've ever experienced a trauma bond where one part of you wants to stay with the person and the other part of you wants to get away from them, right? Those are polarized parts. One part of you wants to do this. One part of you wants to do this. One part of you wants to ask a question in class. The other one wants you to shut up. And then there's a part of you that's trying to figure out which to listen to, right? Those parts are polarized. And as disorganized attachment, surprise, surprise, there's all sorts of polarizations. But the main ones that we're looking at here are, again, the anxious parts, the attachment-seeking parts that fear abandonment, and then the avoidant or protective parts that fear closeness. That's the core polarization of a disorganized attachment. Part that wants closeness, a part that fears closeness, one that fears abandonment, and one that fears closeness. They're both protectors. Both of them are, both sides, and they're trying to keep you safe. Neither of them understand the greater good or that they are both looking out for you. They both think that the other is wrong and the other is bad. You've got to identify that pattern, those parts in that system inside of yourself, Then you got to start to unblend from these things. Instead of saying, again, this is just like the avoidant. A part of me fears closeness. A part of me fears abandonment, right? And starting to bring some calm, some compassion, some presence. This is, for disorganized attachment, best done with an IFS practitioner or someone that can help you through this process because it's really hard to do and activating to do by yourself as you're bringing this self energy into these parts. And then you've got to start to what IFS considers befriend and flesh out and get to know the two sides of this polarization and ask them what they're afraid would happen if they didn't do their job. Help both sides understand what they're protecting you from and just build trust between the two of them before going deeper into the abandonment wound or the neglect wound or whatever it is, the abuse wound. And then the final part of IFS, which is done with someone else, this is absolutely, disclaimer, something you do not do alone because it can be absolutely, completely dangerous, is working with your exiled emotions, going to that deeper wound, that abandonment wound, maybe because disorganized attachment often comes from more overt trauma, big stuff can come up. And so again, this is not something you do by yourself. Like have an IFS practitioner that's trained, go on the IFS Institute website, look at the practitioners and make sure they've gone through level 1 training at least so that they can handle and work with you through this exile, not just IFS informed. I love IFS informed. It's great, but it oftentimes leaves you less complete than being able to get all the way to an exile. So to truly work with this attachment system and heal this disorganized attachment, you've got to get to that deeper stuff, release that baggage, unburden that part of you that got stuck way back then, and start to shift its beliefs that love is dangerous. Okay, this is where you can start to repattern that attachment system, and you can start to reorganize around yourself, which is calm, connected, clear, present, courageous, confident, playful, creative, all these beautiful things. And that is you earning the secure attachment. That's what earned secure means. Because attachments are so flexible. Earned secure is someone who comes from anxious, avoidant, disorganized, and it is now more secure. There's still some of that patterning in your brain, right, of the disorganized or insecure attachment of any kind, but you can still be earned that secure attachment as well. So that would be kind of the big picture, more in-depth process for someone who's disorganized. I wouldn't recommend they do it by themselves, but IFS is perfect for attachment type trauma. That's why, in relational trauma, and for doing this kind of work. Which is why I love it and why I'm trained in it.
Yeah, so that was a lot to get through, but I mean, I think like super clear on the steps that can be taken. I suppose my follow-up would be, since we're kind of like in the relationship space, is should you be in a relationship or even like try to be in a relationship while you're working on this healing?
It depends. The core, if we're thinking disorganized attachment specifically, well, really any of this disorganized attachment, it's kind of, the answer is kind of both. A lot of the work initially is creating that internal sense of self, that internal state of regulation and attachment, and then being able to test it out. You've got to use these new skills. You've got to get out into the world. Like I mentioned, in the avoidance space, the work is in the activation. That's true for all of these. So what I see a lot of the times is people get stuck in healing by themselves, and they never get back out into relationships and dating and stuff, or they wait for years and years. And then all of a sudden, they're thinking that they are perfectly healed and everything is awesome. And that's true in the perfectly fluffy container that they've made for themselves in their life. But when they get slapped in the face, when they actually get another nervous system in the room, all of a sudden, all the stuff starts coming up, and they don't have all of the padding and protection and safety that they once had, or that they created when they were completely by themselves. So it is absolutely both. Yes, it is important to start to understand and build that internal state and healthy attachment inside yourself. And then you need to go out and work with other nervous systems, get other nervous systems in the room. A coach, a therapist, that can be a great initial step. But then literally going out there and dating again and being out there and like testing the waters and experimenting is absolutely a huge part of the healing process. Notice I didn't say it's after healing. I said it's part of the healing process to get out there and go try that again, because it builds resilience. The best way that your nervous system can shift, grow, and change is new experiences. And that's why it's part of the healing process, is to go out there and like, oh, I did interact with someone who was not right for me, or was more avoidant, or was more toxic, and I survived, and I showed up differently this time, and I noticed how I felt this time, and I didn't let it go on past this certain point, and I set this boundary. Those new experiences are what build resilience in your nervous system and reinforce that secure attachment you've been working on. But you got to get out back. You got to get on the court. You can't live your life from the stands. You got to get on the court.
So the great thing is most likely, if you're watching this on the Thursday, the day that it drops, there's one out right now. So they're going out, I think every other Thursday is when we're going to be posting these. Some of them will get answered in the DMs themselves. The ones that don't get answered in DMs are going to come here. So no matter what you put in there, you're going to get it answered. So keep an eye out on the Mind Brain Body Lab Instagram for those AMAs. Yeah, ask something, be a part of the next round of questions.
Yeah, please do. I love this. This is great. And then the other thing too that I'm going to start doing is more long form videos on these things more exclusively as well. Like I've got a whole disorganized attachment one coming. I've got a lot of content for helping avoidance coming out, long form and short form, and blogs. So if you're interested in more in-depth breakdowns of some of this stuff, we can drop the link to the blog below as well, to my blog, so that you can get access to my writing and those more in-depth breakdowns of these types of contexts. So, and obviously subscribe to YouTube, subscribe here as well, as we're making more long form content.
Great. We will catch y'all in the next one. See ya.
Hell yeah. Peace out, everybody.